all set? All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting on July 16th of the Revere School Committee. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Roll call, please.
Ms. Gravellisi.
Here.
Mrs. Rizzo.
Here.
Mr. Sinella.
Here.
Ms. Ty.
Here.
Mr. Visconti.
Here.
Mayor Arrigo. Absent. Mr. Ferranti.
Here. Second on the agenda is recognition. Don't believe we have any. Okay, next on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. So the first item under the superintendent's report is new plans for Revere High School in terms of the Chromebook program, the one-on-one Chromebook program that we have had for a number of years now. And I'll just remind the committee that last year we piloted a bring your own device option for some students, not for all students. That's been very successful, and part of the plan tonight that Dr. Perella and Mr. Ferrara are going to present to you includes an expansion of the BYOD, Bring Your Own Device program. So I invite Dr. Perella, who I know is going to take the lead, and then Mr. Ferrara, if he has some support that he'd like to provide in the presentation, to talk more about these changes.
Good evening, school committee. I think we have a presentation to view as well. Yep. So I'd like to start off, but before we get to the presentation, by just saying that in the first year that I've been here, observing the Chromebook utilization has been a real eye-opener. It's a great opportunity for all students. Not many districts have this resource, so I think we're really fortunate to be able to provide these for all students. Okay, so as Dr. Kelly mentioned, last year we shifted somewhat in that we were getting a lot of feedback from students that, at least I was getting it over the past few years from the people that were in positions of power, that mostly juniors and seniors were mostly not utilizing the Chromebooks. And what they were telling us, a lot of them were telling us this, is that they would just take it when they received it, and they'd put it in their bedroom or their house, and then they would leave it till the summer or spring. Hopefully it was still there, and then they would submit it back. So a lot of times, giving them the Chromebook was really sort of pushing a device on them. So last year we thought to pilot this with the senior class and give seniors the opportunity that if they did want to take a Chromebook for the year, they were welcome to do that. But if they wanted to bring their own device in, which in many cases were better than the Chromebooks that we're offering, they were also welcome to do that as well. So the vision for the 9th and 10th grade students this year will be similar in that sense that all freshmen and sophomore students will be assigned a Chromebook. So they'll all get one. This is not an option for them. And it's not an option for them because they utilize these in all of their classes. In fact, I know the 9th grade especially, they really focus much of their work to be used on Google and Google Docs and Google Classroom. And a lot of their material and curriculum is also connected to students using these Chromebooks. So the hope or the expectation really is that all 9th and 10th grade students will be utilizing these in their classrooms and for their assignments. They'll be using it for their projects and the research assignments especially, and also for standardized testing. One of the things that Department of Secondary Education, Elementary and Secondary Education, has shifted in the past 2 years in that how standardized tests are taken. Now they are all taken on electronic devices, so we are able to facilitate that through the Chromebook distribution. All students will be given the Chromebook to use for that testing. Grade 11 and 12 students we're extending that bring your own device pilot or concept to the junior class. Again, all junior and senior students are able to get a Chromebook at any time during the school year. We've shifted this a little bit as well, that we are going to allow students, and not just well, actually it's only juniors and seniors because all freshmen and sophomores will have Chromebooks, but they're able to take out a Chromebook from the Learning Common on a daily basis if they just want to use it for the day, for the week, or for the school year. We are creating systems that we have in place now that will account for what they use it for and make sure that we are able to regain all those at the end of the year. So all juniors and seniors will have the option of getting a Chromebook for any amount of time during the school year, or they can just bring in their own device. The only exception for this are students, 11th and 12th grade students, who are still taking standardized exams, and there are some of those that do that. And in that case, we'll provide a Chromebook at the testing time period. One other shift from previous years is in the insurance option, and this is a really good news as well. I know Dr. Kelly and Jonathan have been working hard to identify a group plan that would save significant amount of money, and the belief right now, and this is tentative because it's still being processed, but that we're going to go to a group insurance plan, so all of the Chromebooks will be insured as one instead of having them individually done, and the hope is that it will go from like a $37 policy to a $25 group policy per device.
And I'll just add that this is an item that we brought to the school committee several months ago that Jonathan really has been spearheading. And so we are hoping that we are going to be at the implementation phase for next year.
Are there any questions about the 9th and 10th grade, 11th, 12th grade plans before we get to the distribution of those devices? Okay. So the distribution plan, and this is a preliminary plan, it will depend on a few things that might change the schedule. For instance, depending on when the Revere High gymnasium floor is put in place, we might have to shift where the distribution is given out. But generally speaking, this is our plan. We're going to have a prior to school start distribution plan where all students, that includes juniors and seniors who want the option, will be able to come in on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, August 20th through the 22nd, to pick up their Chromebook. On Tuesday the 20th, and we're staggering the times too, just knowing that some students work and some families are unable to come at different times, so we try to create 4 different time periods where they can come in and receive these Chromebooks. So on Tuesday the 20th, it would be 9 to 12. Again, this preliminary would be at Revere High School. On Wednesday the 21st, we're going to have 2 opportunities. One is 12 to 3 at the high school gym, and the second is 6 to 8, and this is coinciding with the 9th grade orientation barbecue, and a lot of parents come during that night too, so it would be a good opportunity if they want to come and pick up a Chromebook as well during that time period. And Thursday, the August 22nd, the plan is to have it at a different time, 10:30 to 1:30. Again, I will have a final schedule within the next 2 weeks, and I'll be able to communicate that to the superintendent and to you, and once we get the okay on that, I will make sure that people in the community are aware of it as well. And then just to reiterate, students are able to get a Chromebook at any time during the school year. So they can come to the Learning Common at the end of May and say, I want a Chromebook for the last 2 weeks, or last week and a half, because we tend to get them a week before the school ends. But the point being that they're able to get those at any time during the school year. Generally speaking, that's our plan for next year. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the committee? Ms. Gravellisi?
Thank you, Mr. Ferrante. Mr. Perella, if a student wanted a Chromebook for a day, you said they could just go in and get it, but would they have to be under the group insurance plan, or is that Chromebook going to be insured? You know, how would that work if they didn't have insurance and they broke it?
We would look at, if it's a daily rental, let's say, it would be similar to getting a book out of the Learning Common. Only when it shifts to a longer, that they have it longer than a day, we'll make that transition to placing it under. They're all going to be under the insurance policy, but it would be almost as if we have, for instance, we have carts with Chromebooks available to classrooms and to teachers where they can use in the classroom. It'd be very similar to that. So they won't be charged if it's only for a short-term period.
For a day use. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Any other questions? Ms. Dye?
It's not actually a question, but I really congratulate you on setting up this kind of program because that's what's good for kids. And, you know, so many times in so many places, a set schedule is set up for children and their minds, their bodies, they just cannot meet that schedule, and parents as well. So I really think that this is something that will really enhance their high school experience. And the fact that they can, in the other years, use their own device, I'm glad that that program is being expanded too. So, thank you.
You're welcome. We have noticed in the past that there are a lot of families that are not even around in this week. There are a lot of people coming back from vacations. However, we also have to balance the fact that there are many classrooms that are designed to jump right into the curriculum day one. And last year, because of the transition in leadership, we weren't able to get the Chromebooks till probably a week into the schools start, and there was an impact on that and learning. So we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to get these out as soon as possible.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you very much. The next item on the superintendent's report is a school safety update. And as you all know, as we've discussed in the past, Dr. Vidala has been really spearheading our safety program for the public schools. And that work would be absolutely impossible if it wasn't for our awesome partners at the Revere Police Department and the Revere Fire Department. So Dr. Vidala is going to give you an update on work that happened last year in the schools, lessons learned, and where we're going to go from here in terms of school safety. And we are very fortunate to have with us also Chief Guido from the Revere Police Department and Captain Fortuna from the Revere Fire Department. They are also available to answer any questions around the work that they did in conjunction with the schools over this last year, and also the planning that's going forward for next school year. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Vidala.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. So, as many of you know, safety and security is near and dear to my heart. It's one of the things that we really work on, and just because it's the summer, we don't want people to think that this is something that falls off the radar. So we always want to make sure that people know that school safety is always a priority for us, and the summer gives us an opportunity to first reflect back on the past year, what we've done, some successes and some lessons learned, and then to begin planning for next year. So we have a lot of things that we're happy about. One of the things that I think is very important as I reflect back on last year was one of the presentations that Dr. Perella did during our design summit for the new Revere High School, and thinking about the 3 areas where we want to keep kids safe. We want them to be physically safe, which we talk about our security personnel and our doors and things like that, but we also want them to be emotionally safe and psychologically safe. And so that's a lot of the partnerships that we have with the Revere Police Department and our counseling and mental health staff and the Revere Fire Department. So we have this team approach that really takes us through our safety, making sure that we're not only considering the physical plant, but we're also considering the kids' emotional and mental health needs. So as I look back on last year, some of the big highlights is our continued collaboration with police and fire. So I think about our large events like the Thanksgiving football game and the graduation ceremonies is really a chance for us to get together and to collaborate on how do we handle big masses of kids and adults coming together, and how do we keep our kids safe on these large-scale events. And then we also look back and take some of those lessons learned on how do we work on our day-to-day operations. Even within the first 3 days of school, we partner with the fire department, and they do a fire drill in every school building within the first 3 days of school, and then they also do quarterly fire drills, and they submit reports, and Captain Fortuna is going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. We also talk to our school resource officers, which we have 3, and they provided training for all of our security personnel at the beginning of last year, which was a new addition, and we're going to continue to advance that and work to improve on that professional development. Then, throughout the school year, we meet bi-weekly, the superintendents with the school resource officers, as well as Captain Amy O'Hara from the police department, just to talk about any ongoing issues, how can we be proactive, and how can we keep our schools safe, and what are some of the things that we're addressing. We talked about, at the last year's convening, we talked about our safety plans. Each school has a safety plan that is submitted by October 1st, and then we share that with the police department. And we do our enhanced drills, which is an opportunity to really focus closely on each school and the inner workings of that facility and that staff and those students and how we work. So this year, we did enhanced drills at the Hill School, the Wayland School, the Susan B. Anthony Middle School. We did one at Beachmont, Seacoast, and here at Revere High School in the fall. So as we look to improve our current practices looking forward to next year, we always want to improve communication. We want to strengthen our communication between the schools, the police, and the fire department, and those enhanced drills are really an important piece. When Captain Fortuna came on, we talked about, how are we going to improve these this communication lines. One idea that the police department had in the past was to take and upload electronic copies of all the safety plans for the police and fire department, which we did. And Captain Fortuna's idea was to meet in August and get everybody together and plan all the drills for the entire year so that they're on everybody's calendar and that we have a full staff of people to do our enhanced drills, which is a great idea. So we're going to continue to focus, thinking now away from the physical plan and now to some of the emotional and psychological safety. We're going to continue to focus to develop positive relationships with students and families. So that way we really get to know our students deeply and have a meaningful relationship with families so that as things bubble up, we can address them, we can connect people to services, we can build those trusts so that we don't have things get bubbling up out of control. So really getting to know our students is really at the heart and the core of our safety and our school culture. And finally, we talked about different ways to improve our enhanced drills. One of the things that we've shared with our police and fire is that we do a really good job evacuating the building. That's something that we're really good at. One of the things that we're going to focus on this year is the reunification areas, accountability for where students and staff are as we empty out the buildings and look to get kids back together and get kids back in the building. And then one of the most important things I think that both police and fire have shared is that clarity of communication. And so they talked about in large-scale events, it's important for us to all be on the same page and have a unified command center. So that's their terminology. From the civilian point of view, it's basically that all the important people go to the same place. And you meet at the same place under the same tent, and you have all the important people and the important stakeholders together instead of having each department separated. So I think that idea of collaboration has been an excellent one. I spoke today with Jonathan Ferrara, who directs our technology, and we talked about some of the improvements that we've made over the course of the year to our security in terms of cameras and other technology. So the first thing that we did over the course of the year was we added 5 new cameras to Revere High School to help cover areas where we felt we didn't have camera coverage. And now our total cameras across the districts are at approximately 300. And we have an online system where we can view those cameras and make sure that we can monitor the things going on in our schools to keep people safe. Currently, we have a new grant with the police department, and our technology department is working very closely with Captain Ford and the rest of the police department to add 6 to 8 new cameras in every building, to enhance door access capabilities in the building. And what that means is any building that does not have fob access will get it through this grant, and the police will have access to the building so that if they show up to a building in a case of emergency, they'll be able to gain access to that building and keep people safe, as opposed to going to a locked door and not being able to keep people safe. So that's an important piece. And the final piece of that grant is we're looking at visitor management systems called Lobby Guard, which some of you may have seen at the New Winthrop High School or at Danvers High School, and that is a system that we try to put in every single school where, as visitors come in, we would scan their IDs, it would print out a sticker ID badge for them, and what the really cool technology is in that is it fades after 24 hours. So they couldn't come back the next day and gain access. So they would have to repeat that each day. And part of that is if there were any red flags that came up with a visitor, by scanning their ID, we would be able to connect to proper people. The final improvement in terms of technology is our current radio system. So we've been working with Dispatch and we've been working with Jay Mazzola to create a system where our internal radios have different channels and they can talk within the school, but in case of an emergency, we would have a repeater station that all police, fire, the medical emergency dispatch, and the schools would all be able to talk on one channel, one frequency. Thank you. And that would be used only in case of an emergency, and only certain people would be able to do that. But we would want to make sure that we have that ability to communicate with the medical personnel that would be coming. A couple new things for school year 1920 that I'm excited about is we're going to have a partnership with the Attorney General's Office and Sandy Hook Promise, and they have a whole violence prevention and mental health program. So this starts at the elementary level. They have So it begins with relationship building. They have a system called Start with Hello, and it's a program through, they do an assembly for each grade level, and they talk about building relationships and connecting people so that people don't feel isolated. The next level of that is the Say Something program through Sandy Hook Promise, and that is a chance for people to make sure that if they see something, they're saying something, so it's not that passive piece, but it's making sure that they have an opportunity to report anything that they feel is out of the ordinary. Another piece with mental health, we're partnering with Riverside Trauma to do a program for our school adjustment counselors called Signs of Suicide, which is an important mental health piece to connect people to services. And the final piece of that violence prevention and mental health program is through Sandy Hook Promise. It's called Save Promise Clubs, and it would be student-run clubs, and they would provide some resources for them to be able to get kids involved in an after-school club, and to do some of this work from a proactive standpoint and a preventative standpoint. And finally, one of the other new things that we have going on for 2019-2020 is a safety assessment team. And this idea has come out of many of the conversations that we've had with the police and fire department around, if you have a threat, how do you take care of threat assessment? How do you vet it to make sure that it's a credible threat or just a transient threat, which would be, someone says something but they don't have access to carry out the threat. So how do you make sure you do that on a consistent basis? And so at a recent professional development that I attended, there were certain schools that did this, and they had a small team, someone from central office, probably myself, a school resource officer, a school psychologist. We would make sure that we would have someone from the Save Promise Club, and then probably a teacher and maybe a school administrator would be part of this team, and we would make sure that we vet every threat that we get or have a safety assessment in a protocol that we would do consistently across all the schools. So that's something that we're looking to implement next year so that we make sure that we're consistent across all schools. And so some final thoughts before I ask Chief Guido and Joe Turner to come up and Captain Fortuna. We really want to make strong connections between our students, staff, families, and our community partners. That's at the heart of school safety, is really making sure that we have strong connections, we know who our people are, and they know the resources that they can get in the community. We want to continue to have some opportunities to share information through those enhanced drills, through ongoing meetings, using technology to make sure we do it easier. There's another pilot that we were looking to do. It's called the Share It app. And so that's something that we're considering, and that's an opportunity for people to share something good, but also as an anonymous tip. We currently have a phone-in anonymous tip line that has some decent capabilities, but it's also, in the age of technology, an application where people can text in or can share videos and things like that. This is an opportunity that we have to implement something like this free of charge to the district. And we're going to continue our regular meetings with police and fire so that we can continue to enhance those relationships and improve. So if there's any questions, I could field those from the school committee, and then we're going to ask Captain Fortuna from the police department and Chief Guido and Officer Turner to come up as well.
Any questions for the committee? Mrs. Sinello?
Very nice presentation, and I was very pleased to see with the photo ID type thing. Mrs. Rizzo, myself, and Mr. McGuire back when went to Winthrop, which was superb, the Voc School. And I hope that they take into consideration when building the new high school. You walk into an anteroom, you proceed to like a box office you'd buy a ticket at, thick glass, slide your identification, it comes out with your picture on it, then they open the inner door. Unfortunately now people come in, go to a desk, but they're already in the building. So that's a feature that would like to see that continued on and included where you're on that committee also.
Yes,
But
that's something that we're definitely looking at for the new buildings. So right now, we're trying to figure out how do you keep the current buildings as safe as possible and as welcoming, because we do want our schools to be welcoming. But we also need to maintain that safety and security. So it's always that balance, but it's something that we want to make sure is always on the forefront of our discussions.
I think that the people themselves feel comfortable doing it. I know at the Voc School, a couple of issues of people wanting to come into the building, but there's a reservoir of information. Instead of a card, dismiss with grandma, dismiss, I mean, everything is right there. So if so-and-so comes in, no. So it was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the committee?
Yes.
Mr.
Could you please explain a little more about the Share It app?
Sure. So this is something that we're going to roll out. It's part of one of the partners that we have through one of our social media partners, and it's basically an application, and it needs, in order to roll it out, we need to make sure that the kids know about it, and there would be a link on the website, but you could also download this app, and it would be unique to Revere, and kids can share information. So they can post something good, and we could do contests about how, which class has the most positive things, something that, I got an A on my test today, or, I was able to master this standard today. I had a great day at gym class, things like that. But they could also share, I'm really concerned about my friend so-and-so, or somebody shared something on Snapchat and it's concerning to me, and I can upload the video. So right now, sometimes kids, they record a video and then they bring it to their assistant principal the next day. Well, if that happens on a Friday night, they share it, and then, a couple days go by. So this is a situation where they could upload it, and we could start the process by connecting people to different services and really helping to get people involved. And it's really that whole community aspect of it. So, this is something where people could share information with us, and then we can act on it, and they could do so in an anonymous way. So we're just trying to get as many different avenues for people to say something, share information with us.
It's really a great idea. It's a pilot program, so how will you be starting?
Yeah, so I met last week with the partner to talk to them about what the app would look like, and then we would work with each school to see, who's ready to roll it out, and, we'll meet with the principals and see, because every school is a little bit different, so we want to make sure that our messaging is correct and that we're sharing that information and we're getting it out there. Our goal is to roll it out in all the schools and eventually get that. It's something that, it will be different at the high school than it would be at an elementary school. Kids are carrying devices. Pretty much every kid at the high school has a device. At the elementary school, your K-2 kids primarily don't. So as you get older, some of the kids do. So the way that we'll roll it out will be different. But it's something that is very encouraging. And so I wanted to share it tonight, and we're going to continue to put this on the radar.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Dr.
Markey?
Dr. Badala, in regards to the new grant, first question, how much was the grant for? Any idea? And
John Ferrara's still here.
And when do you project the 6 to 8 cameras to be installed? Is that something that is going to happen in 2020? I would.
Chief, do you have any?
Chief, any?
Good evening, everyone. The city of Revere was very fortunate. We applied for a grant through the COPS office in the amount of $397,000, I believe the total amount was. Only 4 communities in Massachusetts received a grant. We were one of them. I'm sorry the mayor's not here tonight, but I'd like to thank him because he put up the match, which was almost $95,000, because that was a component of the grant. The city had to put up the match. And basically, the grant consists of a couple of different things. One is the cameras for all the schools. We worked extensively with Jonathan and Josh Fadala. It includes, we're actually modifying. We want to do some door access security, the lobby guard. A couple of schools will have license plate readers, so if there was an incident or we could track if someone's in the area, we could load it up in the system. There'll be some training for all the officers in the fire department. We're probably going to do the alert training, but it's not going to be until 2020 because we want to do it when the school's closed. Use the buildings while they're closed, and we didn't have enough time to get it up and running for this summer. Another component is all the police cars are getting new laptops. And we're working with Jonathan, so if there is an incident in the school, the officers responding will be able to bring up the video of the school and the laptop and the cruisers and know what they're heading into. So we're working on that. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of work to be done. The laptops are presently being installed. know Jonathan's been working on a lot of quotes, and then we're gonna have to probably do a budget modification. So it's a work in process, and it'll be over the next 2 years before the whole grant's completed. This year, we're gonna be doing active shooter training again. I believe the fire department will be involved again this August in the schools. Officer Turner will be handling that training. He does an excellent job, and it's been very worthwhile. We'll be sending all the officers through it again. When I became chief, I assigned Captain O'Hara to the schools with the school resource officers, and she keeps me abreast of what's going on at the schools constantly. I thought it was very important in this day and age to have someone in the command staff involved with the schools, and I think it's worked out very well. And Amy's done a terrific job, and the school resource officers, I believe, are doing a terrific job. I speak to the superintendent on a regular basis, and Josh, and very pleased how things are going at the schools. So Officer Turner's here to answer questions. Captain Fortuna and Jonathan can maybe bring you up to date on the technology. A lot of the grant's technology-based, and that's Jonathan's area, and we're making some changes. We're lowering the number of cameras, because after some discussion, we thought it was important to secure some doors at a couple of schools that don't have the fob system to go into the building. And then our goal will be that if the police do respond, their fobs that we use at the police station can open the school door in an emergency during school hours. So we're doing well. So thank you.
Any questions for the chief?
Any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Captain Fortuna, you want to say a few words?
Good evening, everyone. So as you know, as Dr. Josh mentioned, we had fire exit drills conducted in the last semester of school. And the plan is to meet in August, and that plan will incorporate everything we learned, and we're going to hone our skills for things that have become more evident that we need to, they become more urgent. The schools did very well on the exit part of the drill. We probably all have had fire drills since we were in school, but now it's becoming more complicated. You need to have a real handle on how you account for everyone that either is left behind or is outside. And that, with technology and some good lessons learned, we'll take the best plan available, and that'll be the goal for this year. And then we practice. And again, we practice for fire drills, which are a very predictable item, but there's far more today that's unpredictable, and you can practice all you want. You just have to have the tools in the bag to be able to reach out and make a decision for what you're confronted with. And you just look for the most favorable outcome in a situation that may not be that favorable. So we look forward to working together with Dr. Josh and the other public safety organizations here, because we have very professional staffs between us. We have tactical EMTs, we have hazmat techs, we have the active shooter training, which has been very, very favorable for us and the police. So we look forward to working with all the organizations together. Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
Oh, sorry. No, if they have questions, you have questions.
Officer Turner to the front and center.
Good evening. I just realized you were there, and you're the Alice trainer?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, out of my own curiosity, if a district was to start with basic training, would it be just classroom training, or would you suggest another form, like without students, just staff?
When it comes to Alice, the goal with Alice is to get everybody trained. When we say everybody, we're talking about from every single possible employee that is basically paid by that organization, that exists in that facility at any given time. They're trained all the way up to anybody they serve. In this case would be students, and they are trained as well. You have to start somewhere though, and like we discussed last year, it's intensive to get that program complete. So I always recommend with the teachers, because in the end run, any student throughout the age ranges, from all the way down to K level, all the way up to 12, they're gonna look at the teacher for what do I do? And we, as an organization, the Revere Public School System has done a great job of getting the people in charge on the right page. And we're talking about command and control, which is something that's very important in command and control, in that the people that make those calls know how to make those calls and know how to work with each other to get those calls made. Now we're at the level now we need to look at the staff, and because now the kids are looking for their command and control, and that's Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so. So to just simply have a training for teachers on what to do is a good start. On saying, listen, this is what you do on a now, because we've done real good with the macro scale. We got to work down the micro scale, and that micro scale is going to be working with the teachers. Say, listen, in this, when the circumstances lean this way, your decisions should go that way. When decisions go this way, your decisions should go that way. So that's the goal that we do want to end up in. But that being said, it's a lot easier to work with a small town and get Alice going than it is to work with a city. But the next step, in my opinion, my professional opinion, is going to be we got to start working with the teachers. So, you know, it's one thing to have a policy. Policies are great. Just tell a teacher what to do, but when you can get a classroom-style setting with them, it can be a giant classroom amphitheater. But regardless, when you get a classroom-style setting, you got to teach them, and then you allow them to ask questions. Well, what do I do now? What do I do then? That's when their brains are going to start to venture off, and then they become an asset to their students if an incident ever did occur.
Do you ever find people that might refuse to do the Alice training?
I've never found anybody that refused to do it, but that being said, anything taught, I've had people say, you know, I wouldn't want to do that. And because you have to realize there's so many different components. You know, Alice itself has 5 different components. But when it comes to certain elements of, and we'll just call it what it is, it's a run, hide, fight system, as in any active shooter response system out there in the United States of America. It's a run, hide, fight mentality. And there's never resistance in regards to when I tell somebody, hey, this is what you do to save life, or blah, blah, blah. It's the resistance of, I don't think I could do that. That's the resistance. It's not that I don't want to. When I say, listen, if you want to, you know, when it comes to, you know, surviving a bad incident of any type, they listen, they do, all right, that sounds great, blah, blah, blah. However, I couldn't do that. But good instructors that teach know how to deal with that psychological aspect of, I've never been in a high-stress incident. I don't know how I would react. And that's part of teaching it. So. Yeah. Just to cap on what the captain, the chief, and the captain said. On our end of the spectrum, we've gone leaps and bounds, and I'm fortunate to be down the middle. I handle our end of the spectrum, and I've been working with Josh on your end of the spectrum, and we're going in the right direction. That's the most important thing. You know, from our standpoint, last year, the fire department, the police department did our first joint training in active shooter, and that was huge. The state mandated that we start doing that, and we didn't wait. As soon as the state said do it, we did it. And we started doing rescue task force, which is fire department used to back in the day, stay outside until everything was absolutely safe. They no longer do that. They've now been trained to work with us in warm zones, and we've trained our officers how to bring them in and work with them. On our side of the bargain, we've taught our officers how to work in more types of medical response that we would see in an incident like that. And we've done that. We've now put it to the point now that we're doing active shooter training every year. Back a couple years ago, we were doing it when we felt like it, and now it's an every year. It's basically now part of our regular yearly repertoire. We got to get active training done, and like the chief talked about, we're doing it now in August. Last year, we focused on officer individual tactics, the small unit stuff. We'll visit that again next year when we pull in alert and have them teach. But this year, in August, we'll be doing command and control with our police officers. We'll be teaching basically supervisors how to manage the officers they trickle into the building, and how to, when they're in the building, deal with the different things they'll bump into and how to manage that aspect of it. And that all bridges together with all the different elements. So again, we're going in the right direction. So.
Mrs. Rizzo?
And just one last thing. Are you part of the training with the SROs and our security?
When it comes to the SROs, actually the SROs, they've made leaps and bounds. Back when I started working with Dr. Vidal there, it was just me, and I was only one coming to any of the enhanced drills or anything like that. My job is directing training at the PD. It pulls me about 1,001 different directions. And I started to have to task SROs into how to work. SROs are good at school stuff, but when it came to the drill stuff, they're like, I'm really not sure what I'm doing. I started working with them to teach them how to help manage these drills, and they have done a good job, in my opinion, of picking up the slack where I left off. The biggest asset is going to be Captain O'Hara. Captain O'Hara, before it was just me, captain of the ship, when it came to working with the schools, and she stepped in and from day one took that football and just went nuts. She's great because she liaises with me, and she basically asks me, what do her SROs, what do they need this, what do they need that? She gets them not only into the training of, we'll say the tactical training, regards the physics of things. She wants me putting them into the mental health training, so crisis intervention. I actually pulled frontline patrol officers out a couple seats to get SROs into seats priority because she requested it. So, so I inadvertently do train the SROs. I just get them into classes that they need to get into. Our actually SROs, from my understanding, are going shortly into an additional SRO school to get additional training. So again, we're at the spectrum with that one too. So.
Well, thank you and our fire department and police department for all you do in our schools and especially on the streets. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions?
No, I just want to echo the thanks. We couldn't do what we do in the schools if it wasn't for the partners that we have at the fire department and the police department, so thank you very much. I do also want to clarify one thing, which is just that the Revere Public Schools has not adopted ALICE as an only strategy. There are other strategies on how to respond in active shooter or other emergency situations. So, we do a lot of professional development with teachers internally on how to react and how to engage students and how to move into different scenarios. And I think that one of the best things that we do is when Josh and our public safety officers meet and come up with a creative scenario that nobody in the building is aware of, and people are required to just respond to an unexpected situation, such as a blocked main stairwell where people have to find an alternative exit, or different scenarios like that. I think it was Captain Fortuna who said, you can't plan for everything because these things are all unique situations and they all reveal themselves in different ways. A lot of being ready for something like that is about being able to react quickly to negative stimuli. And every single one of us has to think about how we would do that in real time, given a scenario that we're not necessarily familiar with. And the one other thing that I want to add on is we've been talking with the police department, with the SROs, with Josh and with our principals about the idea that if there was a major event in one of our schools and we needed to reunify, especially at the high school level where kids are very independent, we might be challenged in terms of saying, if something happens, everybody's going to go to this particular area. Because knowing adolescents, we know that a large number of those kids are just going to say, see you later, I'm out of here. And if we think we can rely on data of who's standing in a designated spot and assume that anybody who's not there might still be in a building, that's probably a very false assumption. So one of the ideas that we're in a very preliminary stage of exploring is with our coding team at the high school developing a check-in app where kids would just check in and say, I'm safe, and give their location. It's probably a little bit more realistic than thinking that high school kids are going to go to a designated area if there was a major event in the high school building. So we're still developing those ideas. We're going to work with the high school team to develop that. We're working with the police and fire for their input, and I can see Chief Guido might have a comment. Yep.
I think as we go forward, we learned from an incident that happened at the high school this year. Social media is an instant flash, and we're going to have to designate someone when there's an incident to immediately go to social media, someone that knows what's going on, knows the facts. so we can address it right away. They had it on Facebook that we had an active shooter at the high school. It all ended up being false. But it caused a giant panic, and the parents started rushing to the school. So I think that's something going forward we all need to sit down and talk about as part of the plan, that someone's a designated person that can jump on social media, and if there is something that we know is incorrect, we can at least address it, and then more information can follow, because that really caused quite a panic, and most of it was untrue, and we learned from that lesson. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Are there any other questions for the chief, captain, Officer Singer? Turn, I'm sorry, Mr. Visconti.
I'd like to say, first of all, thank you, obviously, to the police department with Chief Guido as well as Captain Fortunata, as well as, and speaking as a parent, okay, it's good to know that the district is moving in the right direction, okay? I have 4 children in the system, and it makes me feel comfortable, not as a school committee member, not only as a school committee member, but as a parent. And it's important, because like Chief said, social media gets out there, the news gets out there, it could be false, and all of a sudden it gives a bad reflection on the district. So it's good to see that the security, we can never have enough security, but it's good to see that we're moving in the right direction to protect the children, and I want to say thank you to all of you for doing what you do. I know I feel comfortable, and it's good to see that we are moving forward as a district.
Anyone else? Thank you, gentlemen.
So the last item on the superintendent's report is a budget update, and I had, when we planned this agenda last week, written pending release next to it, which I think I had a little bit of foresight in knowing that the legislature may not have released the budget in time for this meeting. In fact, that is the case. So I'm going to postpone our budget update until the August meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, 2-minute recess.
Thank you for having.
All right, back at the agenda. All right, back in the agenda, we're on item number 4, student representative report. That's none. Any public participation? They all left. Consent calendar. We need a roll call first before anything else. So can we have a roll call on the consent calendar, please? Yeah, but you have to vote first. Don't you have to vote? Don't you have to?
All right. Mr. Ferrante,
Ms. Gravely, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to take the donations and gifts off of the consent calendar and to be voted on the floor.
All in favor, all opposed, so voted.
Motion to accept the consent calendar?
Need a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Visconti?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti, I'd like to make a motion to accept some generous donations that we have received. I believe we're going to vote on them
Individual.
individually. Museum of Science for $25,000.
Yes, Dr. Kelly will give a brief description on each of the
Okay.
gifts that we're getting.
Sure. So this gift of $25,000 actually comes from the Oracle Corporation, and it's through the Museum of Science for their We Engineer program, and it's going to support our included early childhood classes.
All right, let's do a roll call on the Museum of Science donation.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Visconti?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
The second donation is the SEL grant to the Seacoast for $5,000. A
So-
motion to accept.
Second?
All in favor?
This gift is for Social Emotional Learning Innovation Grant, which Seacoast also received last year. They're going to use this money to continue to train staff for the implementation of restorative justice practices. And just as they did last year, they're going to have the district, they're thankful that the district is a recipient of this grant. The Grant Foundation will receive a letter of thanks from the Revere Public Schools.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Visconti?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
The last gift, or donation, I should say, is the actually it's a gift, a PTO gift to the Paul Revere for $9,379.50.
And this gift, as Mr. Visconti mentioned, is a gift from the PTO to the school. And this amount of money will be used to stipend 13 Paul Revere teachers to attend a three-day training of project-based learning outside of their regular workday, so it's beyond their regular work time. And the training is provided by the Buck Institute for Learning.
Second?
Mr. Chairman, through the superintendent, is this money that the PTO has raised?
It is, yes, yep.
Thank you.
We got a second, right? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Visconti?
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes. Okay, we're all set with the consent calendar. Next on the agenda is report of subcommittees. Do we have any? Seeing none? Okay, next, old business. None? New business? None. School committee interest? Anybody? Nope. Okay, any-
Yes,
Ms. Ty?
I would like to invite everyone to the International Sand Sculpting Festival on Revere Beach. And in the past, our own robotics team has been an active participant down there. and it will take place on Revere Beach, opening on Friday night, the 26th, I think it is, and going through that weekend. And people from Revere often come down the whole week before and the whole week after, come down and enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any motions? None. Executive sessions? None. Adjournment? Wait a second. Yeah, I would like to remind everybody that our next school committee meeting will be August 20th at 6 o'clock in the Ferranti School Committee Room. Thank you and good night.